And Part 4 of the 1959 Banking Act in Australia gives the Governor-General the power to demand the relinquishment of all private gold. Part 4 is currently suspended, but the Governor-General could invoke it at any time. And here I thought all this time that the United States, the country I lived in, was the only country that really ever exercised such totalitarian controls over such a benign and archaic and barbarous relic such as gold. You learn something new every day. Welcome back to the Junius Maltby channel for today's second installment. Not really news related, more of a discussion and a conversation where we get together and talk about the things that we do here on the channel. Mainly the economy and gold. Now, like I just said, you learn something new every day, and today, in reading some things, trying to gain more understanding and knowledge, which we should all be trying to do most of the time, I came across this little fact, this little piece of trivia, which normally I wouldn't have ever came across. And, you know, I'm not an Australian. I've never been to Australia. I would love to go. If any of you would like to have me, I'd like to come down there and metal detect sometime. But I came across this, and it blew my mind in a way. I couldn't believe that the outback, the down under, the tough land of Australia would ever have tolerated such an act. Why do central banks hate gold so much? We're going to kind of weave these stories together and then get back to the Australian thing towards the end, and we'll even show you some of the wording of the act. You know, why do they? Why do Wall Street and the governments hate gold? We've covered this in the past during other videos, probably the best of which in the archives would be the one a lot of you have already been exposed to, and that is the Federal War on Gold. If you have not seen it, please go back into the archives here and please go through that video and listen to it if you can. And if you can, it's just me reading that article by Jacob Hornsberger, but also read the article yourself a couple of times to really try to grasp the concepts that are there. What more is there to say? Gold is money. It always has been, and it always will be. The fact that gold is money is why central banks hate it so much. Central banks succeeded in creating national monopolies on currencies. Only the Bank of England can print English banknotes. Only the U.S. Federal Reserve can print U.S. dollar bills. Only the Reserve Bank of Australia can print Aussie dollars. However, even though central banks have succeeded in imposing legal tender laws by outlawing all competing currencies, one thing is clear. As much as they may like to, central banks and governments can't abolish gold. They can try. The doyen of the progressive movement, the tyrant Franklin Delano Roosevelt, signed an executive order in 1933 to confiscate privately held gold in the United States. Governments and central banks may try to take private gold again. They hate gold because it gives individuals a way to protect against the devaluation of paper money inflation. In today's Money Morning, my colleague, global strategist Jim Rickards, provides more background on the relationship between central banks and gold and where the gold price could head next. Read on below for details. So the above was an introduction to the actual article by Jim Rickards, but some good key points, some good highlights there. And here's another one from another article. Please bear with me again, and then we'll get to the discussion part of this. Gold is hated more than ever by both governments and the financial services community. This is because it has now become imperative to keep the illusion of confidence in sovereign debt and paper currencies. To that end, a gentleman by the name of Wilhelm Buiter, Citigroup's chief economist, shot into the media spotlight by writing a note on the day before Thanksgiving stating his belief that gold is in a 6,000-year-old bubble. Citi's chief economist penned this, quote, brilliant commentary in the days just prior to the Swiss referendum on increasing the percentage of gold reserves held by its central bank. In a clear attempt to influence the gold vote, Mr. Buter also stated on November 26th that the Swiss vote is ridiculous and no self-respecting central bank should ever be putting a large chunk in a single commodity. You see, these haters of gold are becoming more bold and desperate in their attempt to maintain confidence in government-issued debt and currencies as asset bubbles have reached dizzying heights and debt levels have exploded into record territory. You see, here on the Junior Smallby channel, it is my belief that they are going to become more desperate because desperate times call for desperate measures. And these individuals never waste a good crisis, to quote them very selves. And I've told you all here in the past that I don't believe they will ever impose a confiscation of gold. At least I really try to think that they would not, based on, well, a lot of different reasons. I think that they've moved beyond that and found other ways to control our behavior, the peasant, to corral the peasant. And a lot of that is through taxation, also alienating or making the people who do invest in gold or hold gold by somehow through legislation and other means ostracizing us, but putting us outside of the gates of the cities, outside of the walls of community, making us, equating us to ISIS, as some of you very much pointed out in a video in the past when the news broke that ISIS was trying to create a gold-backed currency. By drawing those parallels, they then have written us all into the category of being terrorists. And once you and I fall into the category of being terrorists, we are then faceless humans which can be exterminated or rounded up and put into a cage. No government is immune from these measures, and they will do anything to hold on to power. Regardless of how a government's power is threatened, they will do anything to hold on to it. Whether it's Bashar al-Assad trying to kill people in his country to hold on to power. Let's not get into the whole thing, but just an example there. Let's look at the Civil War in the United States. 600,000 people dead so that they could keep the Union together, and the Union could hold on to its power, the DC, Abraham Lincoln, so on and so forth. But any government that has power will do whatever it takes to hold on to it, even if that power is the monopoly control over currency and the ability to issue currency and debt. So, below is the text of the 1976 Australian government press release announcing the removal of restriction on the ownership and trading of gold in Australia. The attachment to the press release provides a history of controls over gold in Australia. So I'll let you guys just kind of go through it. We'll let it scroll by and you can read some of that. I can tell you right now that I would never give up my gold. And I would hope none of you would either. I don't know the entire quote. I wish, and it's my bad for not, but the one that starts is "life so dear" or "life so sweet." And the point of it is, that we would give up liberty in order to keep our own lives. You see, as an American, and I was born here, but my ancestors were not. But I do believe in certain fundamental liberties. The right to self-defense, the right to personal property, the ownership of my property, my assets, my wealth, the fruits of my labors. And I believe that those two come together in that I can defend both my life and my property with force. You see, I don't believe that a government should be allowed to have the monopoly of force, and that's why I believe in the Second Amendment so dearly. So dearly. We never really get into it that much on this channel because it's not the topic here. But Australia, you guys were disarmed, making it so much easier for your governments to, if they ever wanted to, perpetrate crimes against you. Now, I don't want to turn this into a big debate and alienate people on this channel that might be against firearms, because even if you are against firearms, you're welcome here on the Junius Maltby channel. Even though you and I could never be the closest of friends, because we would disagree on one of those fundamental rights that I believe all humans have, and that fundamental right being that of self-preservation, self-defense, and in whatever means necessary. There might come a time here in the future where either Australia or England or the European Union, the EU, or the United States, where certain economic events take place that will motivate the powers that be to exercise certain measures that violate both yours and mine rights to ownership over certain asset vehicles, certain wealth storage and hedges, mainly being gold. Whether it's the already existing 28% or so tax here in the United States on gold, or outright confiscation, that there will be pressures put upon us. And it's a shame, because it almost seems, you'd almost feel like we weren't welcome. You weren't welcome to exist in a society that is built on a foundation of paper debt and fiat currencies. And in all honesty, we are just trying to carry on honest transactions, mutual volunteerist transactions between each other in exchanges for goods and services, where gold is a recognized medium of exchange between the willing participants in these exchanges. Now, why the government has to get involved and pass regulations, well, you know why that is. We do. We all know why that is. Because, again, it gets back to, it threatens their monopoly of power, their monopoly of force, their monopoly in their ability to issue debt and currency. And I guess the only thing I can say to all of it is that it is incumbent upon every one of us to do our best to educate others, which I guess is the purpose of this channel ultimately, but also it is the most incumbent upon all of us to resist to the end, to never give in, to never ever tolerate their intolerance for our position, for our beliefs. And resistance needs to go all the way to the end. I'm a firm believer in dying for good causes, for what's right. You know, governments try to encourage people all the time to march into battle, to die for their causes. But how about us? How about you and me standing up, sticking our foot down, throwing our fist in the air, and resisting them? Whatever happened to the brave Scots and the Irish, no longer consenting to the governance of the king? Whatever happened to the William Wallaces? Whatever happened to the Patrick Henrys, the John Hancocks, the men who would stand up, who would sign their name the biggest, and stand out from a crowd in resisting tyrants and saying, no, we're not going to do that. No, come get me. Come at me. Send your armies at me. Well, that time may come for all of us. And I would hope that every one of you who watches this channel takes it upon yourself and takes it very seriously to make yourself a William Wallace or a Patrick Henry or a John Hancock, to stand up and, if need be, lay down your life for a cause. And I'm not promoting any form of violence here, so please do not draw that conclusion out of this conversation. And do not mix my words or misquote me here, because at no point have I said be violent. But I have said resist. Now, resistance can be nonviolence. There can be nonviolent resistance. Look at the civil rights movement in the United States. What if you're the Rosa Parks? Just refuse to sit in the back of the bus. take a seat up front. You see, the very governments that like to exercise these laws today are the very governments that enforced many civil rights violations throughout the course of human history. The stars and stripes of the United States flag flew over slavery a lot longer than the stars and bars of the Confederacy. There's a lot inherently wrong with both my government and yours. I don't care where you are on this planet. If you have a government, they have violated the rights of man many times. And we can do nonviolent resistance. And there may be times where it's imperative that there isn't violent resistance. The governments that govern you and I right now support violent resistance against other regimes in other countries every day. As a matter of fact, both England, France, and the United States, among other allied nations, have airdropped weapons for the past several decades to many groups around the globe in order to support those groups in violently resisting what our governments interpreted as being tyrannical regimes. So it only makes sense that if our governments ever became tyrannical regimes, we would have the right to resist, just as they have supported the resistance against other tyrannical regimes. Thanks for being part of the Junius Maltby channel today. And remember, you don't have to consent to anyone's authority. Be the Patrick Henry. Be the William Wallace. Be the John Hancock.